Globe once had skateboarding and surfing locked down. In 2003, their skaters were destroying street contests, while their surf team dominated the World Championship Tour. Today, many younger skaters don't even know the name. The brand that ruled two of the most influential action sports has vanished from the conversation. From Aussie surf shops to a global empire and the crash that followed, Peter and Stephen Hill were Melbourne brothers who surfed and thought like entrepreneurs. They combined their passion for the ocean with sharp business instincts, spotting opportunities where others only saw problems. In 1985, skating was exploding across Australia. But the big problem was that the gear sucked. American brands dominated, and getting them imported was nearly impossible. They launched Hardcore Enterprises with one mission: bring the best US skate brands to Australian concrete. Big US skate brands like Airwalk finally started reaching Australia, and suddenly every skater in Sydney and Melbourne could access skate shoes that mattered. But the Hills weren't satisfied being middlemen. They studied construction, materials, and marketing, and they learned what made these brands connect with skaters. While building their distribution empire, they kept their surf roots alive and stayed loyal to surf culture. The Hills understood something most brands missed. Action sports weren't separate tribes, but overlapping communities sharing rebellion, authenticity, and performance. By the early 90s, Hardcore Enterprises had earned trust in both worlds. Skaters relied on them to bring in the gear they couldn't get anywhere else, and surfers respected them for never forgetting their roots. The Australian market needed more innovation. Local skaters were pushing boundaries American brands couldn't see from thousands of miles away. Rough concrete, brutal heat, and a unique culture demanded tougher shoes and a look that fit the scene. By the mid-90s, the Hills made their move. Instead of distributing other people's dreams, they wanted to create their own. After years of understanding what skaters and surfers actually wanted, Globe was born. Their first shoe designs hit with immediate impact: clean lines that worked on a skateboard, durability that survived Australian concrete, style that translated from skatepark to beach. This crossover appeal was built into Globe's DNA from day one. Most companies tried being everything to everyone and meant nothing to anyone. Globe became something specific to two communities that shared more than they realized. This dual sport foundation became their greatest strength. But selling in Australia wasn't enough. Globe wanted the world. They wanted to own every street corner and surf break from California to Japan. In the late 1990s, Globe pushed beyond the Pacific. American skaters were skeptical, another foreign brand trying to crack their scene. But Globe came prepared. They didn't just ship shoes, they shipped credibility. Rodney Mullen's addition to the family changed everything. The most innovative street skater alive chose Globe over every established American brand. Suddenly, every tech skater worldwide was paying attention. Chet Thomas followed, then Mark Appleyard joined the roster. Globe was securing talent early, building something bigger than distribution. On the surf side, Globe built their roster gradually through the 2000s. Taj Burrow, a power surfing prodigy from Western Australia, became their flagship rider with contest-winning potential. CJ Hobgood added championship pedigree. Mark Occhilupo brought instant legitimacy as an already established legend. These weren't just sponsored athletes, they were world-class athletes who could actually win every contest. Europe fell, and Japanese skaters and surfers embraced Globe's aesthetic. The brand was becoming truly global because they understood that action sports spoke a universal language. Globe wasn't satisfied being a sidebar sponsor with background banners. They sponsored entire skate contests, putting their name on top events. They also backed WSL tour stops, ensuring Globe logos appeared on surfboards charging massive waves. Opinion brought out their skate team's technical brilliance. Early surf films captured their riders threading barrels and launching massive airs. These videos were marketing that exposed their cultural statements, proving Globe belonged in both worlds. The dual discipline strategy was working perfectly. Skaters respected Globe because their surf team was legitimate. Surfers trusted Globe because their skate team was undeniable. Each sport validated the other, creating a feedback loop that traditional single-sport brands couldn't match. By the late 90s, Globe had achieved something big. Walk into a skate shop in Los Angeles or a surf shop in Biarritz, and Globe sat right next to the legacy brands. They'd earned their place through performance, not just marketing budgets. The global push wasn't just about shops and sales, Globe had a roster ready to set a new standard in skate and surf. 2007 hits differently when you're watching United by Fate for the first time. Rodney Mullen pulls off tricks that look impossible. The camera work is cinematic, the soundtrack pulses with underground energy. Globe had cracked the code on skate shoe marketing. While other brands dropped traditional video parts, Globe created visual experiences that transformed skateboarding. Street skaters were absorbing tricks in the entire aesthetic. Urban decay mixed with technical precision. The roster reads like a Hall of Fame for street skating. Mullen anchors the team with physics-defying stunts. Danny Brady attacks stairs like they owed him money. Alex Mole moves through spaces with fluid elegance. Chris Haslam tackles every obstacle with circus-like creativity. Globe shoes crossed over into streetwear, reaching far beyond skateboarding. Kids who couldn't kickflip wore Globes to school. Hip-hop heads rocked them in music videos. The brand had crossed over from skate shops to mainstream culture without losing its core identity. Thrasher and Transworld magazines couldn't escape Globe's influence. Full-page ads featuring their team-dominated editorial spreads. Graffitied walls, harsh shadows, skaters mid-trick. Against city backdrops that turned street culture into art, Globe events became cultural moments. Skaters lined up for United by Fate screenings. Local skate scenes united under Globe's banner. Global skate tours pushed boundaries. Globe teams rolled through Barcelona, hitting legendary spots while filming future projects. They invaded New York's most famous plazas. Tokyo street sessions drew massive crowds. Each tour reinforced Globe as the brand that understood street skating's international language. Globe shoes handled Mullen's precision and Brady's power without breaking down. They weren't just marketed tough, they skated tough. Watch any underground skate film, Globe riders pushed progression forward. Kids wore Globe shoes around the city as symbols of belonging to something bigger than themselves. And Globe wasn't just conquering the streets. Out in the water, their surf roster was about to reshape the culture. The roster included world title contenders whose presence defined Globe's surf identity. Taj Burrow brought raw power and competitive fire from Western Australia's reef breaks. Mark Akalupo delivered a comeback story, mixing soul surfing with championship experience. CJ Hobgood added fresh world title credibility after his 2001 victory. Dion Agus represented the next generation, a style over contest results, but a style that influenced culture. For a few unforgettable years in the mid-2000s, Globe's Fiji contest became surfing's most anticipated event, not for prize money, but for location. Cloudbreak delivered waves that separated contenders from pretenders, and Globe's cameras turned those perfect barrels into moments that lived far beyond the contest itself. In the early 2010s, Globe further pushed surf cinematography with Electric Blue Heaven. Exotic locations mixed with underground soundtracks, where professional surfing met artistic vision. The film transported viewers to remote breaks they'd never see otherwise. Strange rumblings in Shangri-La pushed boundaries further. Globe's surf team explored Indonesia's outer islands, discovering waves that existed only in surfers' dreams. These weren't just promotional videos, they were cultural artifacts influencing how surfers thought about travel and adventure. Their board shorts and accessories filled racks alongside legacy brands, bringing crossover appeal that attracted surfers who also appreciated street culture. European surf shops embraced Globe's aesthetic completely. French and Spanish surfers connected with the brand's travel-focused identity. Event sponsorships created a feedback loop. Globe Pro Fiji showed their team competing at the highest level while building brand recognition among core surf audiences. What set Globe's surf division apart wasn't just results. It was how they made surfing look. Their films mixed exotic locations, underground soundtracks, and cinematic vision in a way no other brand was doing. Globe's surf identity stood on its own, shaping how a generation saw travel, style, and performance in the water. By the mid-2000s, Globe had built a cinematic ocean empire. Their films influenced how other companies approached cinematography. Their team riders pushed performance boundaries while maintaining style that mattered to culture. From 2003 to 2004, Globe's annual sales reached $350 to $400 million. They were culturally dominant, financially massive, and a global empire built on concrete and waves. This was Globe at their peak, when ocean exploration met cinematic vision, creating a brand identity that captured surfing's endless summer possibilities while delivering world-class athletic performance. By the late 2000s, the identity Globe built in both sports was slipping out of reach. Globe still held their position, but challengers circled like sharks, and warning signs were everywhere. Nike SB changed everything overnight. Corporate money flooded skateboarding with resources independent brands couldn't match. Paul Rodriguez and Stefan Janoski became marketing machines backed by million-dollar budgets. Traditional skate brands watched helplessly as Nike poached their best riders with contracts doubling previous salaries. Adidas skateboarding followed the playbook perfectly. Dennis Busenitz and Tim O'Connor brought instant legitimacy, while Adidas delivered infrastructure that dwarfed Globe's capabilities. The Three Stripes entered skateboarding and rewrote the rules. Meanwhile, Vans experienced an unexpected revival. Their classic silhouettes suddenly looked fresh again. Younger skaters embraced authenticity over innovation, and Vans showed skateboarding's roots in ways Globe's technical approach couldn't match. The surf side faced equally dangerous threats. Reef exploded with lightweight sandals surfers actually wanted to wear off the beach. Sanook's sidewalk surfers captured casual beach lifestyle without requiring actual wave riding. Quicksilver's ownership of DC created a powerful combination. DC's skate legitimacy, mixed with Quicksilver's surf heritage, offered everything Globe provided, but with deeper resources and clearer brand positioning. Fashion trends shifted beneath Globe's feet. Chunky skate shoes looked dated as streetwear moved towards sleeker profiles. The bulky aesthetic that defined mid-2000s skateboarding suddenly felt heavy and outdated. Globe's technical innovation mattered less when consumers wanted minimalist designs. Overexpansion quietly ate away at the brand. Globe's product lines multiplied beyond recognition. Too many colorways, too many models, too many SKUs competing for shelf space. Retailers struggled choosing which Globe shoes to stock. The brand that once meant something specific now meant everything, therefore nothing. Team instability made the decline faster. High-profile riders started jumping ship for better offers or clearer brand direction. Each departure weakened Globe's foundation and created doubt among remaining team members. The tight crew that built Globe's reputation was fracturing under market pressure. Core surf and skate shops, which were the Globe's original foundation, began closing at alarming rates. Chain stores and online retailers gained market share while independent shops struggled to survive. Globe's distribution network, built on relationships with core retailers, suddenly looked vulnerable. The dual-sport strategy that once validated each discipline now felt scattered. Instead of reinforcing Globe's authenticity, the approach seemed unfocused compared to specialized competitors who owned single sports completely. This threatened everything the Hills had built. The brand that once seemed unstoppable now fought battles on multiple fronts. And by 2010, the end came faster than anyone expected. Globe had vanished from skateboarding and surfing center stage like they'd never existed. US market share evaporated overnight. Skate shops that once featured Globe walls now allocated single racks to clearance models. Surf retailers moved Globe products to back corners, making room for brands customers actually requested. Globe's greatest conquest, which is the American market, rejected them completely. Contest sponsorships disappeared one by one. Globe pulled out of major skate competitions as budgets tightened. WSL tour events that once showcased Globe's surf team became memories. Without contest presence, Globe lost their platform for reaching core audiences. Film production budgets were slashed. The steady flow of skate edits and surf expeditions that once defined Globe's identity slowed to a trickle. A few standout projects still slipped through in the years ahead, but they were rare sparks in a fading system. For most of the team, the cameras stopped rolling. And without consistent films, Globe lost its voice in action sports culture. By the early 2010s, Globe's look felt dated. The bulky silhouettes that had defined their golden years now clashed with streetwear's shift towards sleeker, minimalist designs. Globe's problem wasn't just too many shoes anymore. It was that their style no longer matched where the culture was going. International distribution networks collapsed. European retailers stopped ordering Globe products. Japanese distributors shifted focus to brands with momentum. Australian shops, which is the Globe's original stronghold, cut back their Globe sections to clearance bins. Even at home, the brand was shrinking. Team riders left without fanfare. No dramatic announcements, just quiet departures to brands offering better opportunities. The athletes who built Globe's reputation found new homes while Globe struggled replacing them with unknown riders who couldn't generate equivalent interest. Cultural relevance died the cruelest death. Skate magazines stopped covering Globe, and surf films no longer featured their riders in standout parts. The brand that once shaped both sports' visual identity became invisible. Young skaters and surfers discovered Globe through sale bins, not through inspiration. Retail presence shifted to discount chains and outlet stores. The core shops that championed Globe during their rise now treated them as filler brands. Premium shelf space went to companies that supported the industry with marketing dollars Globe no longer possessed. The Hills watched their empire dissolve in real time. 25 years of building respect in skateboarding and surfing vanished within a few brutal seasons. Globe became a cautionary tale about overexpansion, market saturation, and losing touch with core audiences. The brand that once reigned across two action sports had become a footnote in both. Their throne was about to be empty, and their crown about to fall. Globe refused to surrender quietly, and in 2012, they launched a tactical fight to reclaim relevance, drawing every survival strategy they could find. Nostalgia became their secret weapon. Globe reissued shoes millennials remembered from their teenage years, classic models that ruled the early 2000s. The CT4 returned in original colorways. Iconic silhouettes that once shaped street skating reappeared in limited runs. These were time machines for skaters who missed Globe's golden era. The strategy worked in unexpected ways. 30-something skaters bought reissues to recapture their youth. Fashion-conscious consumers discovered Globe through vintage aesthetic trends. Nostalgia sales couldn't restore Globe's former empire, but they kept the brand breathing when everything else was failing. Globe sought survival by reconnecting with independent skate and surf shops, shifting focus away from major retail chains to smaller outlets with deeper ties to core communities. Through heritage reissues and limited edition models, Globe offered exclusive colorways and crafted collaborations that appealed to collectors and loyal fans, helping to rebuild important relationships with retailers that remembered Globe's peak years. Many of these special releases generated strong demand and quickly sold out at shops worldwide. By leaning into focused, niche launches and partnerships, Globe regained valuable momentum, especially in skate-centric markets across Australia and California, while staying connected to their roots and loyal following. Globe found success in secondary skateboarding markets where corporate brands hadn't completely penetrated. Smaller surf scenes welcomed Globe's return as an alternative to oversaturated mainstream options. They supported emerging surf athletes who couldn't secure contracts with bigger brands. These partnerships cost less while keeping Globe connected to action sports progression. Globe studied survival strategies from brands that had navigated similar challenges. Vans transformed from near bankruptcy to cultural relevance through smart collaborations and focused marketing. DC rebuilt their reputation by concentrating on core skateboarding instead of mainstream expansion. Globe took those lessons and tried to fuel their own recovery. The approach was methodical. Globe stopped trying to be everything to everyone. They focused on what they could execute well. They're known for quality shoes with authentic design stories. Marketing budgets went toward targeted campaigns, rather than broad awareness pushes. Results were mixed but promising. Globe wasn't challenging Nike SB for market leadership, but they weren't disappearing either. Quarterly sales stabilized. Retail relationships improved gradually. Core skaters and surfers began acknowledging Globe's existence again, even if they weren't switching brands immediately. By 2018, Globe had established a foundation for continued operation. They'd learned to compete within their means while maintaining brand integrity. The comeback wasn't complete, but Globe had proven they could adapt to post-collapse reality. Those comeback attempts may not have restored Globe's peak, but they left the brand alive enough to still matter today. Walk into a surf shop in 2025 and Globe still exists. Not with the commanding presence they once held, but as a steady undercurrent in action sports culture. Their current skate line focuses on essentials rather than innovation. Globe isn't chasing trends anymore. They're serving skaters who want reliable performance without corporate branding overload. The surf division maintains a stronger pulse. Globe board shorts blend technical functionality with understated design. European surfers especially appreciate Globe's quality construction without the aggressive marketing that defines larger brands. Australia remains Globe's strongest market. Domestic surf and skate shops still stock Globe, even after years of contraction, because the brand's local roots never completely lost credibility. Locals still remember Globe's authentic rise from hardcore enterprises. Australian consumers trust Globe because they witnessed the entire journey. American skate shops carry limited Globe selections, usually positioned between more prominent brands. European distribution exists but lacks the depth of Globe's golden years. The international empire has contracted to select markets where Globe maintains genuine relevance. Collector culture preserves Globe's history in unexpected ways. Vintage Globe shoes command serious prices on resale platforms. The secondary market values Globe's legacy more than current retail sometimes suggests. Social media reveals Globe's quiet persistence. Their Instagram shows current team riders progressing in both skateboarding and surfing. Content lacks the production budgets of peak-era Globe films, but authenticity compensates for polish. Followers engage with genuine appreciation rather than manufactured excitement. Regional surf scenes embrace Globe as an alternative to oversaturated mainstream options. Portuguese surf shops stock Globe because customers want brands with heritage over marketing budgets. Small surf towns appreciate Globe's connection to authentic culture. Fashion cycles eventually return to every era. Y2K aesthetics already influence streetwear trends. Globe's early 2000s designs could resurface if cultural timing aligns correctly. Their catalog contains decades of proven designs waiting for rediscovery. Globe operates in survival mode many legacy brands would envy. They maintain product lines serving loyal customers without requiring massive growth to justify existence. The pressure to dominate has lifted, allowing focus on quality over quantity. Today's Globe is authentic without agenda. They continue because they genuinely belong. Icons don't really vanish. They wait for someone to bring them back. Globe's story lives in every skater who remembers United by Fate, every surfer who owns a faded Globe board short, every collector hunting vintage models. Globe proved one brand could authentically master both skateboarding and surfing.
Biggest skateboarding shoe and clothing company in the world, DC Shoes.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, DC Shoes was the defining brand of action sports culture. From skate parks to city streets, from the X Games podium to your favorite TV show, DC defined what it meant to be part of action sports culture. The oversized logos, the chunky skate shoes, the stacked team of legends, DC was on top of the world. At its peak, DC was a billion-dollar powerhouse, revolutionizing skate shoes while expanding into snowboarding, BMX, motocross, and rally racing. It had a super team of icons, unforgettable ads, and some of the most creative marketing in action sports history. But today, the brand that once dominated the industry is struggling to stay relevant. So, what happened? How did DC go from one of the biggest names in skateboarding to a brand that's now a shadow of its former self? Was it the corporate takeover, the changing skate trends, or something deeper? And most importantly, is there any way back? Before DC Shoes was a global powerhouse, it was just an idea. A vision created by two college kids with a passion for skateboarding and street culture. In 1991, Ken Block and Damon Way launched a small clothing brand called 8Ball while studying at Palomar College in California. Their goal? To create streetwear that matched the raw, rebellious energy of skateboarding. But there was just one problem. They didn't own the trademark. The name 8Ball was already claimed by another company, and as their brand started gaining momentum, legal trouble shut them down. They had no choice but to abandon the name, losing valuable time and money in the process. It was a brutal lesson in business, one that would shape how they approached branding in the future. Instead of giving up, the duo pivoted. They experimented with a few more brands before landing on Drawers Clothing DC in 1994. The brand quickly gained momentum thanks to Damon's brother, Danny Way, a rising skateboarding superstar. With his name attached, DC had instant credibility in the skate scene. But apparel wasn't the endgame. Block and Way had bigger plans. They saw an opportunity to reinvent skate shoes, which at the time were basic and lacked durability. DC was going to be different. It would bring performance, technology, and innovation to the world of skate footwear. And it worked. In its first year, DC did over $1.5 million in sales, an unheard of number for an independent skate brand. But as DC was climbing to the top, legal challenges threatened to derail its momentum. DC Shoes wasn't just another skate brand, it was making waves in the footwear industry. And with success came legal trouble. The first major issue? The logo. When DC launched, its original logo featured the letter D inside the letter C. It was a simple, clean design, but it didn't last long. Champion, the well-established sportswear giant, saw the similarity to their own logo and threatened a trademark lawsuit. Block and Way had a choice: fight a long, expensive legal battle or rebrand. They chose the latter, quickly redesigning the logo into a new overlapping D and C with a 5-point star. But the lawsuits weren't over. Converse stepped in next, claiming that DC's 5-point star design was too similar to theirs. Once again, DC had to make changes, adjusting the star to 7 points, creating the iconic logo we recognize today. Just as they settled those issues, another heavyweight came after them: DC Comics. The comic book giant didn't like another company using DC in their name and took them to court. But this time, it backfired. During the legal battle, DC Comics couldn't prove they actually owned the trademark on the letters DC. The ruling came down in favor of DC Shoes, and instead of losing their name, they won the right to keep it, plus a royalty payout from DC Comics until the comic company eventually redesigned its own logo. For a young independent skate brand, these legal fights could have been fatal, but instead of sinking them, they did the opposite. They put DC Shoes on the map. At just a few years old, DC had already proven it could hang with the big dogs, and more importantly, it showed that the brand was disrupting the industry enough to get noticed. But if DC thought lawsuits were the biggest battle they'd face, they were wrong. The real test was about to come, and it would determine whether the brand could survive the corporate world. Before social media, before viral videos, before influencer marketing, DC Shoes was already doing it. Ken Block and Damon Way weren't just designing shoes, they were engineering hype. They knew that to dominate skate culture, they had to sell a lifestyle, not just a product. And that's exactly what they did. DC didn't just sponsor riders, it made them icons. Their early print ads weren't about clean-cut marketing, they were raw, unapologetic, and rebellious. Whether it was a grainy photo of a skater mid-trick or an absurd over-the-top stunt, DC knew how to get attention. The message was clear. This wasn't just a brand, it was a statement. Then came the collaborations. In the late 90s and early 2000s, DC was ahead of the curve, partnering with Supreme, KWS, and Obey, long before sneaker collabs became the norm. These weren't just branding exercises. They positioned DC at the intersection of skateboarding and streetwear, making it the go-to brand for skaters and style-conscious youth alike. But where DC really changed the game was video. Skate videos had always been a core part of the culture, but DC pushed the production level to something never seen before. The DC video, 2003, wasn't just a highlight reel. It was a blockbuster, featuring mind-blowing tricks, high-energy editing, and riders like Danny Way and Colin McKay becoming household names. Then, in 2005, Danny Way took DC's reach global. His legendary jump over the Great Wall of China wasn't just one of the most insane feats in skateboarding history. It was a defining moment for DC. Suddenly, this wasn't just a skate brand. It was a brand that made history. And DC wasn't stopping at skateboarding. Unlike other brands that stayed in their lane, DC aggressively expanded into snowboarding, BMX, and motocross. Their snowboarding program was stacked with legends like Travis Rice and Devin Walsh. Their motocross team featured top riders, and they were one of the first skate brands to take BMX seriously. By sponsoring top athletes across multiple sports, DC positioned itself as the definitive action sports brand, not just a skate company. At its peak in the early 2000s, DC was untouchable. The brand had cracked the code, owning skateboarding while crossing over into streetwear, music, and the broader action sports scene. In 2004, DC Shoes had reached a level of success that few skate brands had ever achieved. It was pulling in massive sales, dominating the action sports scene, and influencing streetwear before it even had a name. But with that kind of growth comes a choice: stay independent and risk plateauing, or take the money and scale even bigger. That year, Quicksilver purchased DC Shoes in a deal reportedly worth $87 million, a move that sent shockwaves through the skate industry. On paper, it made sense. Quicksilver was one of the biggest action sports brands in the world, and with its global distribution, DC had the opportunity to reach an even wider audience. At first, the partnership seemed like a win. DC's sales skyrocketed, with the brand pulling in over $1 billion in revenue by the early 2000s. More stores, more marketing, more product lines, It looked like DC had secured its place as an action sports powerhouse, but things weren't that simple. With Quicksilver at the helm, DC started shifting focus. The underground feel that had made it special began to fade. The marketing became safer, the designs leaned more mainstream, and the brand's core skate audience started noticing. Then, in 2005, Quicksilver made a $320 million mistake. They bought a French ski company, Rossignol, in an attempt to expand further into the outdoor sports market. It backfired, badly. The acquisition tanked, leaving Quicksilver in financial turmoil. By 2009, they were $1 billion in debt, and suddenly, the company that had once promised to take DC to the next level was fighting just to stay afloat. And when the parent company is struggling, the brands under it suffer too. Marketing budgets were slashed, athlete sponsorships became inconsistent, and the once unstoppable momentum of DC shoes started to slow. By the early 2000s and 10s, DC was still big, but cracks were forming, and they were only going to get bigger. By 1995, DC made one of its most important moves, signing a young Dyrdek. At just 16, Dyrdek wasn't just another skater on the team, he was a marketing force in the making. He quickly became one of DC's most recognizable athletes, not just for his skills on a skateboard, but for his ability to connect with fans. Dyrdek wasn't just a pro skater, he was a personality, a showman, and a marketing genius. In an era before influencers, he was exactly what DC needed. From Rob and Big to Fantasy Factory, he made sure DC wasn't just a skate brand, it was a pop culture phenomenon. His shows weren't just about skateboarding, they were about lifestyle, fun, and pushing boundaries. Something that resonated with a mainstream audience that didn't even need to skate to love the brand. The numbers were undeniable. It's estimated that DC's sales doubled thanks to Dyrdek's massive TV exposure. Every episode featured DC gear, DC logos, and Dyrdek himself constantly repping the brand. It wasn't traditional marketing, but it worked better than any ad campaign ever could. Suddenly, DC wasn't just for skaters, it was for everyone. But Dyrdek's influence on DC went beyond just visibility. He was also designing some of the brand's best-selling shoes. Over his 20-year partnership with DC, he created 29 signature shoes, starting with the RD1 in 1995. His designs weren't just about style, they were about pushing skate shoe innovation forward. Models like the RD2 and RD3 introduced reinforced toe caps and impact-resistant soles, making them some of the most durable and functional skate shoes of their time. His influence even extended to skate park design, with DC backing his Skate Plaza Foundation, an initiative that helped bring better designed skate spots to cities worldwide. But while Dyrdek brought in millions of new fans, his influence also changed the brand's direction. DC started leaning more into lifestyle products, expanding into fashion and casual wear, and slowly moving further away from its raw skateboarding roots. To some, this was growth. To others, it was the beginning of the end. And while DC was thriving under Dyrdek's spotlight, a new wave of competition was about to hit the skate shoe market, one DC wasn't ready for. Dyrdek's departure from DC in 2016 was another major turning point. After years of carrying the brand on his back, he walked away, signaling that DC's golden era was coming to a close. Without him, the mainstream exposure faded, and DC was left to figure out what came next without its biggest star. By the early 2010s, DC Shoes was in a dangerous spot. The Quicksilver buyout had fueled explosive growth, but when Quicksilver collapsed under financial mismanagement, DC got caught in the fallout. In 2015, Quicksilver filed for bankruptcy, and suddenly DC, once a billion-dollar powerhouse, was just another asset on the books of a struggling corporation. The company was restructured under Boardriders Inc., a corporate entity created to salvage Quicksilver, Roxy, and DC Shoes. But the new leadership had a major problem. They didn't understand skateboarding culture, and worse, they didn't seem to care. Marketing budgets were cut, sponsorship deals dried up, and DC lost many of its biggest athletes. The brand that once set trends was now playing catch-up in an industry it used to dominate. But DC's struggles weren't just internal. There was another problem brewing, one even bigger than corporate mismanagement. Nike, SB, and Adidas Skateboarding were taking over. For years, core skateboarders had rejected big corporate sneaker brands. Choosing to support skater-owned companies like DC was when it started. But Nike and Adidas had deep pockets and unstoppable marketing power, and by the early 2010s, they had successfully infiltrated the skate scene. Nike SB, in particular, rewrote the playbook. They signed top-tier skaters like Paul Rodriguez, Stefan Janoski, and Eric Koston, dropped limited edition dunks that hyped up the sneaker world, and backed massive contests like Street League, events that DC had once dominated. The impact was devastating. Skaters started switching teams for bigger paychecks, sneaker collectors drove up hype for Nike SB releases, and suddenly, DC was no longer the go-to skate shoe brand. To make matters worse, DC had no answer to the shift in skate trends. Chunky skate shoes were out, slimmer, more functional designs were in. Nike, SB, and Adidas capitalized on this, while DC struggled to evolve. Their once innovative designs started feeling dated, and their marketing lacked the firepower to compete with global sneaker giants. By 2015, DC was still alive, but barely. The brand had gone from setting trends to chasing them, and without strong leadership or a clear direction, it was fading fast. By 2015, DC Shoes was no longer the industry powerhouse it had been. The biggest issue was that DC had lost what made it special in the first place, its identity. For years, DC had been one of the most influential names in skateboarding and action sports. It had a rebellious edge, an unmistakable look, and an attitude that made it feel authentic. But in an attempt to keep up with the industry, DC started chasing trends rather than setting them. The chunky skate shoes that had defined the brand were suddenly replaced with generic, forgettable designs. The once groundbreaking marketing campaigns had all but disappeared. And worst of all, the brand's roster of top-tier athletes had dwindled. Skaters like Danny Way, Colin McKay, and Chris Cole, riders who had defined DC's golden era, were either dropped or moved on. Even longtime BMX and motocross athletes started disappearing from the roster. The team that had once been DC's greatest asset was now a shell of what it used to be. And then came the final blow. The mainstream audience that DC had relied on was moving on. The death of Rob Dyrdek's TV empire marked the beginning of the end for DC's grip on pop culture. With no more Fantasy Factory, no more ridiculousness brand integrations, and no more Rob and Big reruns, DC lost one of its biggest sources of free marketing. Ken Block, who had played a huge role in DC's success, was now focused on Hoonigan, his own motorsports brand. Without his vision and marketing genius, DC's content felt stale and uninspired. Even DC's once thriving snowboarding division took a hit. The company that had once led the charge with Travis Rice and Devin Walsh was now struggling to stand out in a crowded market. Today, DC Shoes still exists, but it's a far cry from what it used to be. The brand that once dominated action sports culture is now just another name on a corporate balance sheet. While it still releases new collections and sponsors athletes, it no longer carries the same influence or cultural weight. Can DC ever return to its former glory? The answer remains unclear. But one thing is certain, there was a time when DC wasn't just another skate brand. It was the skate brand. And for those who grew up wearing those oversized DC logos, that era will never be forgotten. What do you think? Does DC have a shot at a comeback, or is its reign over for good? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you're into the stories behind the brands that shaped action sports, check out this video next. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got plenty more deep dives on the legends, companies, and moments that define the culture. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.